Microphone must be turned up loud. Good evening and welcome tonight. Well, my stuff's out of order, I apologize. We're going to be, and we're thrilled to have you here tonight. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Eddie Torres. If you can come up and stand, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Eddie is a helpful student who goes above and beyond each day to help his peers and teachers. He treats everyone with respect and has a positive attitude that spreads to those all around him. Eddie embodies what it means to soar at Wendell Creative Arts and Science Magnet Elementary School. I want to thank you for representing the school tonight and tell you how proud we are of you, and thank you for being here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Our invocation tonight is from the Wendell Council of Churches and is brought to us by the Covenant Presbyterian Church, Debbie Osterhout. Did I say it right?
Yep, you sure
Okay,
did.
Great. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. So let us pray. Creator God, we give you thanks for this day and for the many blessings that have been a part of it, for the gift of life and friendship and for the love of family, for the support of community, for these folks that are willing to step up and serve in leadership roles within our community. We thank you for their service on our behalf. We thank you for our children. We thank you for our parents that have helped to shape who we are. And we ask that we will use the resources that you've entrusted to our care to your glory and for the furtherance of your kingdom here on earth. Keep ever before us a vision of community, of mutuality and equality, of justice for all. We say those words in the Pledge of Allegiance. Help us to live them. We would ask that you would be present with these members of the town council as they deliberate. Give them insight and wisdom. Give them open minds and open hearts. And it's in Christ Jesus, his name, that I would pray. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. There's no one signed up for public comment. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, thank you. Item number 4 is the recognition of Wendell Elementary School teacher Amanda Radford. You can come stand up here. Amanda is new to Wendell Creative Arts and Science Magnet Elementary School this year and has transitioned very smoothly. She's a great addition to the team and is always ready to share ideas. She's already made strong connections with students and families and works hard to create meaningful lessons for her first graders. We're so lucky to have Amanda here in the heart of Wendell. We just wanted to have you come here tonight and thank you for all the things that you're doing for our kids here in Wendell. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 5 is a public hearing for Annexation Petition A-1802 for 19 acres of property located at 0 Wendell Falls Parkway and adjacent to the town of Wendell Park property. And I'm not going to do the PIN numbers. Go ahead, Mr. Mark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is a public hearing for an annexation petition we received for 19 acres plus a little bit of road right-of-way that's just south of our town park. We'll sometimes refer to this as part of the Parkview property. You have the PIN numbers in there for the record. Tonight, we're looking for you to hold a public hearing, consider taking action, and action could consist of approving the attached ordinance for adoption if you're prepared to do so. The applicants in this case are Arnold and Maria Huerta and their daughter, Cristina Huerta Castaneda. They've submitted the petition, again, about 19 acres plus some road right-of-way. Currently, these properties have one dwelling and a small cemetery, but are otherwise vacant. The property owner began discussions with staff regarding a potential townhome conditional district at this site. and is seeking annexation in order to obtain access to town utilities for this purpose. They've not actually submitted the conditional district application yet, but we are expecting that to come in soon. The town clerk has certified the sufficiency of the submitted petition. On your screen, highlighted in yellow, you see the parcels identified within this petition. It's currently zoned Neighborhood Center, or NC. Again, they intend to submit a conditional district request for a townhome development, so there could be some amendments to that current zoning as part of that. Both water and sewer are considered available to the site, so if annexed and developed, they would be required to extend those lines into the proposed area. From a tax standpoint, currently there's only one dwelling. They have a total assessed value of just over $400,000, so the current tax rate, as is, that be looking at approximately $2,000 in annual tax revenue. Of course, that would change quite a bit as the property is developed, but without any kind of even preliminary site plan in place, we can't really say what that post-development tax value would be. This, of course, would require some services from police, public works, but currently both departments serve adjacent residential developments, so this wouldn't be any large or significant extension of their services in this regard. So again, we're asking to, sorry, that was the end of the report. Be happy to take any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bergmark?
David, we talked about the property in the past. Is everything moving forward in the kind of a way we thought in the past? I saw the description of the townhome stuff there. I knew that when we talked about the property behind it, or to the north of it, we haven't, or we're interested in how this piece of property develops. Does that all seem to be going kind of?
Right. So one of our goals in looking at this property was getting a connection into the park, and we included that within our transportation plan, showing a connection, and so they've been made aware that that would be a requirement to have that connection point to the end of their property line. So yes, that would be moving forward, and then it would just be up to us in terms of making that last bit of connection into the town park.
And then David, the little small cutout there at the bottom of the map, what is that small area? Right where the R3 is, I guess.
That's actually a tiny piece. That's a pump station, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions, Mr. Bergmark? All right. Public hearing is now open. If anyone wishes to speak for or against the annexation petition, step forward. All right, seeing none. Public hearing's closed. What do y'all want to do, gentlemen?
I see this being just nothing different than what we have, and we already cover basically both sides of this piece of property, so I don't think this would add really much to our town staff. I make a motion to approve the annexation petition for the 19 acres of property.
All right, we have a motion to approve the annexation petitions. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Right, item number 6 is a public hearing for annexation petition A1803 for 15.54 acres of property, excluding right-of-way, adjacent to Groves of Deerfield subdivision on either side of South Hollybrook Road, identified by PIN numbers 1783921299, 1793020954, 1783837560, and 1783947008. Mr. Bergmark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor,
Should've
for
read
reading
the
out that
other ones, too.
long title.
Yeah, I should have read the other ones as well.
So again, this is another annexation public hearing. In this case, we're actually not asking for action tonight because there's a conditional district request that is associated with this, and the applicant has stated their desire to hold action until they know if the conditional district seems, if the board's in favor of the conditional district. If they're not, then there's no need for the annexation at this time, and they would want to withdraw their annexation request. So we're looking to have the conditional district hearing at November 12th meeting, so we're looking to continue this date, but we had already publicized it beforehand, so we need to at least open the hearing, go through it, see if anyone wants to speak, and then continue it.
Just continue the hearing, don't close the hearing.
Correct.
Thank you, okay.
Um,
Go ahead.
So this annexation petition was submitted by Fred Smith, or on behalf of Fred Smith, for approximately 116 acres, excluding the right-of-way along South Hollybrook Road. It includes 4 contiguous parcels that I'll go over. Currently contain 1 dwelling, but it's otherwise vacant. They've submitted a R4 conditional district request that's currently under review to create, at last count, 339 unit subdivision. We're still waiting on some comments back from a couple of our partner agencies. Town clerk has certified the sufficiency of the annexation petition. Let's see, and again, we're looking to have this continued to November 12th in order to make sure that the conditional district is mutually agreeable between us and the applicant. So the area in yellow are the areas that are included within their annexation petition. The area that's hashed out, they've actually excluded that area, but currently it still shows as part of the same parcel. But that area in red would not be included within the annexation or the conditional district request. Currently, this area is zoned primarily residential agriculture with about 8-acre piece on the southern tip of the site that's actually under the Wake County zoning. Again, they've submitted the R4CD under review. Public water and sewer would be extended at the time of development. They're actually looking at putting a new pump station in to serve this development, kind of along the southwest tip. But it would be, they're working with Raleigh to work out the details, but it would be larger than just their site would be required. So they're trying to get some financial assistance from the city of Raleigh for that reason. From a tax standpoint, again, there's only currently 1 dwelling, so the total assessed value of all the land and the 1 dwelling is about $1.7 million at a current tax rate, 49 cents. As is, that would be about $8,000 in annual tax revenue for the town, which would of course increase as it develops. We can't really speak to what the average value of the homes would be, but just to give you some point of reference, again, the plan calls for 339 lots. If the average value of each one were at, say, $200,000, which is approximately the value of the Groves of Deerfield subdivision, which is nearby, then based on that, the annual tax revenue might be somewhere in the realm of, $300,000 or so, $332,000 if it was exactly $200,000 per lot. As stated in the previous hearing, we, of course, would need to provide services to this. Police and Public Works are already providing nearby to Groves of Deerfield, so this would not be any kind of significant burden in terms of extending those services to an adjacent parcel, although this is larger than the previous annexation. So that's what I have for you tonight on this item.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Bergmark?
And the pump station, the lift station they're talking about, I know you said it would be bigger than what they're attempting to serve, but I mean, is that a developer-driven decision, or is that a city of Raleigh?
It's really a city.
Water down south is an issue with Raleigh, generally speaking. Getting them to want to cross that line is they get really upset if we were to go on South Selma Road. They don't want to cross that line, so I'm trying to figure out why they want to run right up to it.
So I mean, it's a Corpa-driven requirement, not a town-driven requirement. It's about the most I can say to that.
We'll look into that and provide a response to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm just interested because there's a lot of developable land that direction, and I've heard from elected officials in Johnston County, people that own property on both sides of the county line, that we're going to have this middle of nowhere where no one gets services. So if we're planning on things, I'd just like for the city to address what the plan is.
Yeah, I can ask for information on what the service area would be for that pump station, essentially.
And I mean, I asked that question out of both concern and protection for both this development and future developments, just knowing what that's going to look like in the future.
Any other questions for Mr. Bergmark? All right. Public hearing's now open. Anyone wishes to speak for or against the annexation petition, come on up. All right, we're going to leave this public hearing open.
Sherry, do we need to state that we're continuing it specifically
Do we need to say a state specific? Yes.
Yeah, we need a motion.
Motion, okay.
I'll make a motion just to, leave the public hearing open and continue this at a future date,
What was the date? November 11th?
November 12th.
Tuesday, November 12th.
Okay, so we have a motion to keep the public hearing open until Tuesday, November 12th. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, great, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is a review and approval of proposed mural for cruisers located on Wendell Falls Parkway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is review and approval or action on a mural application that we received. Newland Communities put together this application for a mural to be placed on the Cruisers building. The Appearance Commission reviewed this mural application at their September 4th meeting. They unanimously recommended to the Board of Commissioners approval of the application for kind of, and this is along the side and rear, it kind of turns the corner of the Cruisers building at 2301 Wendell Falls Parkway, with one suggested condition that as you'll see in the picture, there's what appears to be red bike outlines, that they're placeholders for actual bikes to be attached to the wall, or that they be removed or colored in a more similar fashion to the other color elements used. I'll skip ahead to the image. So you can kind of see the smallest bikes. They're kind of that orangish reddish color. That's the one they were referring to. The intent of those, I spoke with the applicant, is to be a placeholder, and their desire was to actually have physical bikes placed up on the wall. And I'll get into one potential issue with that and how they're going to try to deal with that. So as part of their long-range work plan, the Appearance Commission set a goal of having more murals painted downtown. So that's why they review these. It doesn't have to be specifically downtown oriented, though. Newland expressed a desire to implement a mural on the Cruisers building due to its location. It's very visible as you're first coming into Wendell, first coming into the Wendell Falls community, eastbound motorists on Wendell Falls Parkway. So this made it kind of an ideal location. The bicycle theme of the mural highlights the development's active bike trails, as well as serves as a marker for a future Greenway Trail connection, which would connect to Wendell Falls Parkway along the edge of this site. They chose an artist named Autumn Copeland, who, according to the applicant, is known as the Greenway artist in Raleigh. She's done a number of murals along greenways in Wake County. And in this case, Newland's fully funding this. They weren't asking for the Appearance Commission to put any funds towards this mural. So again, there's the general concept design for the murals, all bike themed. There are a number of criteria that we follow when looking at murals. So every time that we have an application request, we go through these as staff to ensure that it seems to be meeting each of these, mainly looking to make sure that it's done in a way that's not taking away from the more commercial presence along that primary facade of the building, that it's not really serving as advertising for a business. In this case, since it's a bunch of bikes, that's not really a concern. There is one standard that talks about projections. A mural should not extend more than 6 inches from the plane of the wall upon which it's tiled or painted or which it's affixed. So this is one concern with those bikes. So what their plan is to kind of essentially shave off one side of the bike so that they can then place that against the wall and it won't be projecting far out. But if that doesn't work, then they would just paint on an appropriate stylized bike instead of having a physical bike attached to it. So staff is asking the board to review this recommendation of the Appearance Commission and take action if you're prepared to do so. the architectural front or primary facade of this building actually doesn't face Wendell Falls Parkway. It kind of faces eastward towards the center of the site. A portion of the mural would wrap around the side of the building facing the parkway, but it's not even making up half of that side. And so staff doesn't view that as a conflict with the town's mural regulations. In order to, as I mentioned, in order to meet the projection rule, they would have to remove the handlebars and probably, shave off one side in order to have it meet that projection requirement. Staff has reviewed the proposed mural, has determined that so long as the proposed bikes are narrow to fit against the wall, that the mural would meet the town's regulations, and we are in favor of it. That's all I have for you.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bergmark?
David, help me understand a little more when you say you're shaving off half the bike. So are we eliminating where the handlebars will be coming out from the wall? Is that what it's
So on the wall side, they just basically cut off the handlebars and remove the pedal on that side, so it could be placed flat against the wall, so it wouldn't, the total amount wouldn't.
Basically the bike frame with the wheels minus the handlebars and the pedals.
Well, there'd still be a handlebar on one side. It's just the side that's up against the wall. That side would be.
Okay, so the handlebars will be coming out, away from the wall. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Making sure.
At least that's the intent. I mean, they have to make sure it works, but that's what they want to try to do. And if that doesn't work, then they'll just paint on some bikes.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed mural for the cruisers located on Wendell Falls Parkway.
All right, we have a motion to approve the proposed mural. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 8, staff report for Hurricane Florence. We want to hear from Chief Bill Carter.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board. I was asked to come before you this evening to kind of provide you a recap of what had the potential to be a significant event for the town, and to give you an idea of how we planned, how we responded, and what we do as we work through one of these events. And in monitoring the weather today, we see we may get another little round, albeit not quite as severe currently predicted. Excuse me. So I really titled it, if you notice, the team at work, because that's what it takes to respond to one of these, from our partners across the county to our own interdepartment to the elected officials to the community as a whole. That's what it takes to approach one of these events successfully and handle it. September 4th, Hurricane Florence formed off the coast of Africa and began to track westward. On September 10th, the forecast path had it coming ashore near Wilmington, moving northeast right across Wake County. Local, federal, and state authorities began to prepare days in advance, with Governor DeClooper declaring an initial state of emergency, which at that phase essentially lifted certain transportation restrictions, allowing agricultural products to be harvested ahead of the storm, fuel supplies to be upped, and a variety of other things that are essential to the business of the communities. It was initially projected to be the first hurricane to hit North Carolina head-on since Fran back in 1996, and we all remember what Fran was like. On Tuesday, as late as Tuesday, September 11th, National Weather Service said, and this is a direct quote from one of their programs, significant impacts are expected from Florence, including storm surge, extreme winds, possible tornadoes, and exceptional amounts of rain, which will likely cause flash flooding and eventually serious river flooding. At that point, rainfall estimates were as high as 40 inches in some coastal areas of eastern North Carolina. Cities such as Wilmington, Raleigh, Fayetteville were predicted to be in the crosshairs of this devastating storm. At that point, it was projected to come ashore as anywhere from a Category 3 to a Category 4 storm. Well, that basically what you have before you is a chart of the storms. Now, if you notice the wind speeds in mile per hour, a Category 3 being the lowest projected was 111 miles per hour. A Category 5, of course, being 155 miles per hour. That is sustained winds. That is not gust. So bear that in mind as to what we were looking at that point. Well, in some ways, the good news for us is over the next few days, the forecast models came more into consensus, and they began to tell us that Florence was going to come ashore, make a turn to the southwest, and then traveled west across South Carolina before then making a turn and hooking around back north into North Carolina, into the western part of North Carolina. Well, if you look at that map that you see before you now, we were not in the center of the cone, but we were also not outside the cone, meaning things could change very quickly. So at that point, at the very least, we considered ourselves to be on the right upper quadrant of the storm, which is the most severe side to be on as a storm of this magnitude comes ashore. We continued to plan just as if we were going to get a storm along that lines. Well, I said plan. Now, what do we do? First meetings were held on Monday, September 10th. The department heads and the town manager met to discuss the impact this storm might bring upon our community as it passed across the state. We continued to assume it was going to be a major storm. As such, we began to focus on ensuring that all equipment was at a state of operational readiness. Keep in mind things break, things go down, but the reality is if you're dealing with a storm where you're in 24-hour response time, repairs are not something you want to make. So a lot of effort goes into making sure things are ready. Looking at and making appropriate staffing adjustments as required across the departments to ensure the coverage that would be needed in the event this storm was a protracted event. Inspection and appropriately addressing storm water systems, clearing them where necessary, and reviewing safety plans to ensure risk to our teams were minimized. When you get into an environment like this with lines down, trees down, it is a much higher risk than it is every day out there for all of us that are responding. Well, that same day, Manager Collins and myself participated in a conference call with the North Carolina Division of Emergency Management, in which Governor Cooper reminded us all of what we were about to face. And again, he too noted the high storm surges, the strong winds, and the inland flooding that could occur. That conference call went along to discuss a lot of specific preparations across the state because the storm was poised to hit a majority of the state at that point. Excuse me. Over the next few days, the individual town departments worked diligently and focused on a significant amount of time on the storm preparation. We looked at things, as we said, like equipment preparation. Public Works stepped out and did an accelerated debris, a second round of yard debris collection ahead of the storm, getting as much off the streets as they could prior to the predicted impact. Looking at and assessing stormwater systems, that's particularly important because if you have a major storm with a major stormwater issue and you have damage to that stormwater issue, FEMA will want to see, when you last looked at it, what it was like and what it was like after the storm to determine if a problem was attributable to the storm. Looking at and documenting facilities. One of the things we learned in our previous storm with Matthew was basically document. So photographs, looking at damages and things like that. We began a very high-pressure public awareness campaign that continued throughout the event with utilizing our own website, Facebook, message board, Twitter, Instagram. Ms. Scoggins was a key component of that. She kept that running for us, and we could depend on her to get those things pushed out. We looked at and made decisions concerning hours of operation. Well, of course, Parks and Rec made the decision based on what the storm predictions were, cancel all events after 5 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. The decision was also made to close town offices on Friday. We looked at and received a temporary debris management site approval from the state. That was approved the same day. It's a process of providing them documentation, and that is our debris site that's down at Public Works off of Lake Glad Road, but we have to provide them additional information to be allowed to take this larger capacity and deal with it should it come. We also identified the potential for a second site should we have had a huge impact, and that being the upper gravel parking lot at the community center over on the left-hand side, more or less toward the Pecan Grove area. We began to coordinate daily with Wake County's emergency operations. They established their emergency operations center, and we worked with them and had daily conference calls. We also utilized the Web EOC, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is a remote access system we can use. And of course, considered and with you all's input, the mayor asked us to sign on to the Wake County Declaration for State of Emergency, which was signed September 12th. And the final thing we were doing was resource documentation, establishing a plan beyond what we do every day with our timesheets to say what we're doing and how we're doing it. Those things, again, we learned are essential at the backside if we seek reimbursement. there. And again, that's you know, this is an example of something that Scoggins found and pushed out for folks to see in our social media. Simple statement, but when water's rising, very true. Interagency cooperation is very critical in an event like this. Wake County is fortunate enough to have a very robust emergency operations plan, which provides a comprehensive plan to deal with things all across the county. In 2015, the mayors of all municipalities signed on an agreement to adopt that plan or participate in that plan. That's what generated the first municipal partner call on that Tuesday that we discussed, and then Wake County went live with its fully staffed EOC, or Emergency Operations Center, on Thursday, September 13th. Those conference calls were held daily, like I mentioned earlier, and we talked about weather forecast conditions, what shelters were out there. Now, some of you may have had questions or inquiries about shelters. Two things were happening in Wake County. First off, as people were evacuated from the coastal regions, some of them were sent to Wake County through what's known as the Coastal Region Evacuation and Sheltering, or CRESS agreement, that works all across the state. 3 shelters were opened and picked up a large capacity and influx of people from the coast, but no one from Wake County was ever turned away. At the peak, 6 shelters were open and were relatively shut down fairly quickly. Other things that were covered were the unmet needs. Every day, without exception, they went through the participants and said, is there anything we need for you to do? And then any other things. The other thing was to discuss whether we had local emergency operations centers. What you would find is some of the towns elected to utilize and set up their own EOC. We utilized a process which is more locally known as a forward command system, and that was involving the town manager, Public Works, Police Department, the town clerk, and the fire department, where we were in constant communication, either by phone or meeting as needed, to discuss and respond to things that we might find. We also had to submit daily situation reports to this group so they could know what's going on in the eastern part of the county. I mentioned WebEOC. WebEOC is essentially an online crisis management system. It gives us the ability to look at the shelters, see which ones are open, to ask for resources from the county. That's the way we make those requests. Everything that goes on, from something that's needed in a shelter to some more significant piece, a generator somewhere, all of those things are visible there and assigned to people and easily and readily tracked. I couldn't say this, the partnership that we have with Wendell Fire is amazing when it comes to these times. They are there every time we have a major weather event, whether it's helping us clear roads, responding to support us, offering a place for us to come dry off and just sit and take a break. There was no, I mean, when it's all hands on deck, you can depend on them to handing a lot of hands out, if you will, excuse the pun. But Chief Staples and I were in constant contact with regarding the incident throughout the incident until basically things settled down. Well, now we got the storm's arrival. Friday morning, September 14th, it hits Wrightsville Beach as a Category 1. A Category 1 storm is just about 74 miles per hour or greater. The track was still good. The track was still turning to the south and southwest, as we earlier mentioned. However, that day, even at the emergency management call at 1 o'clock, they were saying we would still get 20 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts to 45 and an additional 6 to 15 inches of rain landing right here in Wake County. This storm still had plenty of speed, uprooting trees, damaging houses, causing massive power outages. And then it slowed down, at some points even stalling over land, and at the best moving at 2 to 3 miles an hour, which just continued to dump devastating amounts of rain in the southeastern quadrant of the state. New Bern, Wilmington, we've all seen the videos. We all know what it looked like. And you know, this was predicted in the sense that we, as I said earlier, some places were poised to get 40 inches, predicted to get 40 inches, and in fact got 34, 35. So those predictions by the National Weather Service were pretty good. The flooding that created the impassable highways, including major interstates. We saw an impact from that. When I-95 was closed, if you heard complaints about 64, that's why. 95 was routed over to 64, back down and back out through Georgia and South Carolina for a connection point. So, yeah, we were impacted by the floods without even realizing it, I guess. The storm did like it was supposed to, as the forecast said it would do, and at the end we got about, and I'm basing this unscientifically on an old-fashioned rain gauge in my front yard, I saw 6 1/4 to 6 1/2 inches of rain throughout the duration of the storm. What did it do for us? As I mentioned earlier, Public Works and Police made staffing adjustments to respond to the initial storm. One of the big things that Public Works did was they established a 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. two-person response team to keep the catch basins clear, deal with signage, deal with trash, deal with debris. Those teams worked on Friday, Saturday, and a portion of Sunday to focus on stormwater management as needed. Public Works also utilized the community center as a respite area so they could place to have a break, and there were a few people, because of their residence locations, they needed it out of a concern about commuting problems. So they were planning to stay and stay as long as needed. Of course, Parks and Rec, as I indicated, were canceled until 5 p.m. and we closed our offices. And the good thing is, at the bottom, by 2 p.m. on Sunday, all scheduling was back to normal. We had pulled the extra people off the road, even relieved crews ahead of schedule, largely because the storm didn't deliver the impact that we believed it initially would. You know, Wendell community as a whole fared pretty well in this, in what happened with Hurricane Florence. Mr. Collins and I went out, I believe, twice on Friday, once on Saturday, in addition to the police officers, in addition to all the public works crews, everybody looking, finding, and fixing where they could. We did likewise to kind of hit it all the communities and see what was going on, to see if there was anything to do at that point that we could respond to. I think the best philosophy I could say was, if our town staff saw something and it was a problem, they stopped, they took the time, and they fixed it right then. Whether it was dragging a limb out of the road, whether it was tying a piece of caution tape on a low-hanging cable line, whether it was debris in the stormwater catch basin, if you were out, you were working. But it's those little small things that make this be a more effective method of dealing with the problem. Power outages, I think we all know that if we're affected by them, it's a horrific thing. The reality is about 500 customers in and around Wendell, from the best we could determine, that was the peak outage, with more than half being out in the area of Eagle Rock and Wendell Falls Parkway. And I can tell you that probably came on about 7 p.m. on Friday evening, based on the best information I recalled. We did have another significant outage out Hollybrook, but that one was not long-lasting by comparison to some. The others were one and twos, and as we all know, if your service to your house is damaged, it's going to take a while to get to that. Like I said, the low-hanging lines that were cable or phone or anything that were non-dangerous were flagged and marked. On Friday, Public Works took advantage of the new bucket truck, or new to us bucket truck, because we had a limb that who knows how long it had been weakened dead on Wendell Falls or Wendell Boulevard right at Selma Road, and it decided to land right in front of the stoplight so you couldn't see the stoplights. They responded with the truck, took the hydraulic saw, and were able to safely clear it and get that road back open, and also clear the impact on that traffic light. After the storm, we went through, we looked at all the buildings and determined if there was any damage. The most significant damage, police department, we did notice a few minor leaks in the roof, but we have a metal roof that's angled, and it appears they came through some of the protrusions that are just blowing rain that will happen. Very minimal, a couple of panels, ceiling panels. You'll notice here, probably the most visible damage was this limb of a Radford pear that decided it was time to go to the ground, and that's down in our park, easily and quickly removed. And of course, Public Works dealt with a much larger than normal amount of yard debris. I think that's twofold. Of course, they accelerated a debris collection early in the week, but then they jumped on it Monday with all hands on deck and all pieces of usable equipment. And as of Monday evening, they had, the Monday right after the storm, they had collected 153 cubic yards of debris. To put it in perspective, the large knuckle boom holds 25 yards roughly, so that's about 6 of those full. Well, the final thing we did was an after action. And whenever you have a major event, just like our Harvest Festival, just a hurricane, we sit down and go through to identify what was done well, what could we do to improve in the future, and what needs did we have. This storm didn't impact us nearly like we thought it would. But, as you know, right up to the last day, you had to plan for it. That's not the time to plan when it's knocking on your door. We did not have to implement the plan that we had in place, which is a good thing. But it allowed us to kind of be a little slower, a little more deliberate, look at things, document things, and talk about things that we should do going forward to improve our services to the town. And there's a list of those, and we'll go through them very briefly. We wanted to establish a town resource guide, which includes equipment available and consumables to maintain. Such equipment as what would we need if we needed to overnight more employees here in town if they couldn't get into town. We saw that, I remember that vividly in Roseville and Fran, all the impact areas were blocked and nobody could get in. So what will we need to have them the ability to sleep over? How about food and perishables, just to include water? What will we need? Based on projections that we saw with this storm, we were told early on in this storm that if you had a need and you were going to make that request from the state, you should anticipate 3 days to get that need satisfied. So we used that as a guideline and said we need to have 3 days of these types of supplies, food, or some type of arrangements to feed, or working with our staff to determine how we need to do that. Capital needs. The reality is sometimes you do identify things that you need. Public Works looked at it and said they really saw a need for a high output mobile generator, a trailer-mounted generator that they could haul around and do repairs. Now, it could be used down there on site, but they were trying to run a welder on Friday or Saturday and realizing, hey, if we were trying to do this and we didn't have any power, we couldn't fix our pieces of equipment. Getting one on wheels would allow you to connect it to the building if you needed, but it would also allow you to go on site and look and make the repairs on site. Same thing with the police department. Police department's needs a little bit better. Different. We do have that light tower, but what most people don't realize is that light tower is probably 6,000 to 8,000 watt. It is a very small output, not much bigger than the kind of generator you have at home to run the refrigerator or freezer. But the ability to have a standalone, remote start, self-contained system down there is something we've talked about in the past. And this, had this been protracted where you're without power for 7 days, we would have had a different set of circumstances. One of the things we want to do, obviously, is establish and test a plan for Parks and Recreation to open the community center as a respite or mass transit center for citizens. Our community center is not designed for, nor equipped, nor approved to be a full shelter, so that will never occur. But in a large-scale event where you're relocating citizens to a shelter, they look for major collection points for people to be able to come to a single point and collect on a Raleigh transit bus or whatever to get to the shelters. So those are things we talked about, refining some of the things we already do have in place. Working with waste industries to try to inform customers of pickup delays. That's an ongoing process. We've already begun to do that. Likewise, working with Duke on issues where citizens are reporting repeat outages. I mean, if there's an area that goes out every time we get a severe thunderstorm or hurricane or whatever, we need to look at that and at least communicate our concern to Duke and say, is there something that can be done to mitigate this? It may not be eliminated, but at the very least mitigated. Again, that too is ongoing. Establish or co-join with an existing mass debris contractor should the debris from a storm exceed our capacity. If you think about what this storm could have been like, and if you remember what Fran and Floyd brought to the communities that you may have been around at the time, and you were impacted, you could see that as hard as our people could work, with all the equipment we have, there's just no way that we could manage it and dispose of it and meet all the federal and state guidelines and do it in a timely manner so citizens can get back to normalcy as soon as possible. This is actually an item later on the agenda this evening, I believe, to be addressed. Similarly, we look to see if there are other contracts that we could take advantage of in extreme situations, other buying contracts, other service contracts that counties or we may be a part of or state have in existence that we can essentially utilize for the same terms and conditions. Then we also wanted to look at National Incident Management training for additional staff. NIMS training is how you set up the EOCs, how you handle operations centers, and it is essential should you go into a full-scale event with FEMA for reimbursement and to really defend your process and make sure your process runs as well as it could. It's very organized, it's very structured. I know Manager Collins has been through a great deal of training, as have I regarding it, but we want to look at extending that training. The good news is a lot of that training is available online, so we're in the process of identifying who the stakeholders that need to go through that are. We'll get them ramped up over the next, in the near future. And we'll look at things like operations chiefs. Essentially, that's the person that's running the show, that's calling the shots from the operations standpoint. The logistics and sheltering. Remember I said you got to plan for 3 days out. Somebody has to feed. Somebody has to identify, well, if the only restaurant open is in wherever, how do we get food from there? How do we make those purchases? Planning, and that is planning for the future. How do you plan for the manpower, the equipment? Where do you get it from? Finance, documenting. There may be variances from our normal processes that can legitimately occur, but someone needs to be in place and trained along that line. The communications component, and then post-event recovery. Those are just a few of the areas that we felt like you'll get core training in NIMS or National Incident Management, plus additional training in certain disciplines appropriate to the responsibilities that you may be called upon to execute. And then finally, I think it's very fair to say, we recognize that some of these things are costly, and so we want to look for grant funding to support equipment and supplies, as well as training that may be needed for future incidents. This may be in the form of money through FEMA, the Goldley Foundation. Some things indirectly could come through other grant sources. Governor's Crime Commission might be an opportunity to look at something. So we recognize that when we look to try to fund things for circumstances like this, these are actually good opportunities to look for external funding sources. So that basically concludes my presentation. The only thing I would add in closing before I ask if any questions is as you watch this, you would notice there were not a significant number of pictures in here. Many of them were things we got off the web, from the turnaround, don't drown, to the hurricane image. The big picture you got was a broken Radford. I think as we talked about this preparation, we consider that a good thing, because we don't have a lot of pictures to share with you. So with that in mind, I'll be glad to take any questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions for the Chief? I did mention to the manager the other day that you mentioned the Hollybrook area and repeat outs. I've had several people from that area mention to me that's chronically out, so that's something we do need to report to Duke.
It's already been brought on their radar.
Great, thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
appreciate that. All right, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Item number 9 is an agreement with Wake County for removal of mass debris. You want to hear from the manager tonight?
Well, I thank the chief for prepping this item for your consideration tonight. Hopefully that'll shorten my report a little bit. This item did come up in planning for Florence, in that one of the things you review are what contracts do you have in place in advance to be able to handle an event. And you have to look beyond your own capacity, but to worst case scenarios in doing your planning. And so one of the items we quickly identified is that while the town has increased its public works capacity to deal with debris and store and haul away material, if there was a mass event need from any weather event, whether it just be a strong summer storm or a hurricane, we may need additional outside resources. We became aware that Wake County a couple years back entered into a full process and legal review to obtain those services. Within their agreement with those companies, they included the ability for the municipalities of Wake County to enter into cooperative purchasing agreements, which is what you have before you today. What FEMA, and these are FEMA vetted companies that can get FEMA reimbursement. That was one of the requirements that Wake County went through in their process. There are 2 companies that can do the debris removal, hauling, storage, and then FEMA also requires a monitoring company to monitor those companies to make sure they're complying with federal laws while they do it. So there's two cooperative agreements for hauling, for the debris removal, 2 for monitoring. Depending on the scale of the impact and their other clients, one of those companies and one of the monitors are available during the storm. It gives us the flexibility to pick and choose from an a la carte menu on the services that we particularly need at a given time. It does not keep us from entering into our own agreements with local vendors and other businesses as needed. This is just a very large backstop in a worst-case situation. We would be able to join the cooperative agreement with Wake County, with your direction to me. When we got into the process under the state of emergency, I had the ability to enter into this. Once we realized that the storm was not going to impact us that much, I backed off a little bit and said, let's hold this off for council and go through a normal agreement process for your consideration and approval. That you have the staff report in front of you. You've got the lengthy background information. If anything in particular came to your attention, I'd be happy to answer those questions at this point. There's no cost to enter the agreement. Anything in the agreement that we would ask for services in that size of an event would be later reimbursed to the community. So typically what would happen here is you would pay out of your reserves and get reimbursed from FEMA funding at a later date. This just gives you that backstop so that you can tell your community that you have the emergency backstop place in some large companies with a lot more resources than we're going to be able to afford anytime soon.
Anyone have any questions for the manager?
I have one. So is that like a blanket assurance that FEMA will always reimburse us?
No.
Because from what I understand, it's per storm.
Right. The county has to have a qualifying event.
Right.
All this is saying is that these vendors have been pre-approved as FEMA eligible providers. They meet all the criteria for us to get reimbursed.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
If I may take the liberty of just thanking staff.
Yeah.
I know the chief gave the presentation. That really is an all-hands kind of experience when you go through, even just preparing for something that misses you. All the departments, David and planning are out cataloging and photographing things on Main Street so that in the event that things were torn up, we'd have the ability to file claims and get reimbursed. Finance is reviewing contracts. Public Works are out proactively clearing gutter drains. Police are keeping things safe so that people try not to take advantage of a bad situation for community. There's a lot of little moving parts to an event like that, and the efforts of staff and long hours when they have to be away from their families at a time when naturally that we want to be with them was exceptional, and I was proud to work with them during that event.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Do you have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the cooperative purchasing agreement and authorizing the manager to sign on the town's behalf.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agreement. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Number 10 is the update on the town's ordinance prescribing procedures for disposal of surplus property valued at less than $30,000.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board. You have in your agenda packet a updated town ordinance there that deals with the disposal of surplus property. Essentially, the old ordinance was dated. It did not have the use or the ability to use an online auction site. So this ordinance is basically bringing us up to date. And with that being said, we were asking that the town is asking that the board adopt this new revised ordinance.
So we had not looked at our ordinance since 1997, is that right for this?
As it pertains to this particular item, yes, ma'am.
There's been a lot of technological advances since that time, hasn't there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we need to catch up.
Yes,
Do
ma'am.
y'all have any questions for Mr. K?
Make a motion to approve the ordinance amendment.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the ordinance amendment. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, number 11 is our snapshot.
Staff is still in the process of reviewing the snapshot format, and over the next few months, we'll be improving communication tools such as this for a different format.
I have a note here that I was pleased to see the response to get it shrunk down. But thank you for that.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry. Anyone have any questions, anything they'd like to add?
Just in my previous request that was related to City of Raleigh, don't, just for staff, don't feel the need to, make that a specific individual request. That can be rolled into the more grand, comprehensive conversations with Raleigh.
Okay.
Just as far as what their plans are for water in the future down there.
Anything else? All right, item number 11 is update on board committees by town board meeting members. Technical Review Committee, Commissioner Carroll.
The last TRC committee meeting was for that conditional use district on South Hollybrook. It has not been approved yet. There's still discussion, so.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next one is Campo. That one's mine. I was not able to attend. I was out of town. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Wendell Fire Board, Commissioner Joyner.
Wendell Fire Board met last week. We received the audit. Conveniently enough, we use the same auditor that the town uses, so it's pretty easy at this point for me to read their audits. And they received an audit that was free and clear, good to go. We also talked about the implications of the storm and what that meant to the fire department. There's been an uptick recently in structure fires, so if you don't have a smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector in your house, and you live in the city limits of Mundel, if you don't have the ability to get one, call the fire department and let them know you don't have a smoke detector, and they will come out and put a smoke detector in for you. So we have seen an uptick in the actual structure fires, so Commissioner Boyette's not here tonight to say it, so if you don't have a smoke detector, get a smoke detector. They worked to make sure that they were treating all of their employees equitably in the way that they use vacation time. Obviously, you think about these storms and that being an extenuating circumstance, but for some professions, firefighters, police particularly, extended hours are normal, and your paycheck often reflects a combination of regular pay and overtime pay, and sometimes policies get out of whack. So I'm happy to report that they have got a new policy that they feel a lot more comfortable with. Will make sure that firefighters are being treated the way they should be, especially inside the corporate limits of Wendell.
Thank you. Go right on into the commissioner's reports. You want to go ahead and start, Commissioner Joyner?
I think anyone and everyone will start their commissioner reports tonight by the obvious, and that's we've had a hurricane and a harvest festival since our last board meeting. So certainly, thanks to town staff on both accounts. Once again, someone next year has to make sure that they catch the chief Friday night at some point and put a pedometer on him, because every time I see him during these events, he's just running, or it looks as if he's running. I'm sure he's walking, but to me it would be running. And then the rest of it, the Harvest Festival, all it takes to put it together. Even as a commissioner that's been around for a couple of years now, I don't know that I know all it takes to put it together. So I openly acknowledge that and say to Valerie and Joe DeLoach and Greg Hopkins and Petey Edwards and Sherry Hedrick and all the people at the chamber that have worked this year to make this Harvest Festival great. I thought we had more people downtown on Saturday and late into Saturday night than I'd seen in quite a while. So I certainly want to thank town staff and the chamber for that. There's a lot of folks that take their Saturdays and Sundays for several weeks to prepare for it, and then there's folks like our staff that are out there on a Saturday when they work Monday through Friday of that week and they know that they're going to be back at work on Monday. It doesn't go unnoticed, and as I said earlier, I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Myrick?
I was not able to attend the Harvest Festival. However, I did see on social media our town staff was doing a lot to prep for it. I think the chamber did a fantastic job promoting not only the Harvest Festival, but also local businesses. There was a lot of videos online. I thought they were great to promote the videos, and they did a fantastic job. And also, Mayor, since I didn't tell you on Facebook, I'll tell you in person, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Lutz?
Yeah, I'll absolutely echo all the sentiments earlier with the Harvest Festival and the hurricane, and also just to the Chamber of Commerce, all the hard work that everybody did. It was a great event, as it is every year. I just wanted to also put a plug in for this Sunday, the 14th at 1:30 is a Feed Your Neighbor 5K here in Wendell. It is to support the Wendell Methodist Food Pantry. So all proceeds, you can come run, walk, you can push a stroller, walk a dog, whichever you'd like to. But all proceeds will go to support the local families in the area. And winners get baked goods. So I think that trumps any trophy. So if you have any questions, you can check the Wendell Methodist website or contact the church for sign-ups.
Commissioner Carroll?
Yeah, I'll just echo everybody on the Harvest Festival. Thanks to staff and the chamber, and if you didn't see the Little Miss Wendell competition, you missed out. And all the contestants raised, I think it was 7,600 pounds of food.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we're going to have room for the Feed Your 5K. We might have to donate that to a neighboring town, or either find a builder to do an addition on the food pantry. But either way, I got that covered. So, just great turnout, great event. So thanks to everybody involved.
Thank you. Try to be real brief because some of these things have been mentioned, the Feed Your Neighbor 5K. I also wanted to mention that the Wendell Council of Churches is hosting its 2018 food drive. So on Saturday, October 20th, you're going to find a bag on your porch, and they would like you to fill it up with non-perishable things, and they're going to pick it up the next Saturday, October 27th. So please do that for them. You all have to sit it out, and they'll come and get it. I want to remind you of the Wendell Trick or Treat Trail. That's October 26th from 5 to 8 at the Wendell Park. It's not scary, it's real fun. Everybody's out there trick or treating and bringing candy. If there's any businesses that wish to participate, it's not too late to sign up, so please do that. You can contact the Parks and Recreation Department to do that. I also want to echo some of the comments about the Harvest Festival real quick. I've attended several meetings over the last couple of months here and there, and watched with tremendous pride the town staff and their preparations for the Harvest Festival, and people pitching in, taking on assignments, doing things without being asked, and just tremendous professionalism. And I really wanted to let everyone know that I appreciate that, and I appreciate their hard work, and them being out there on a Saturday when I'm sure they'd rather be with their family, or maybe even enjoying the festival themselves. So I really appreciate it. It doesn't go unnoticed. The Chamber of Commerce did a fantastic job. The festival was just outstanding. The administration department, police, Parks and Rec, Public Works, everyone was involved in it, and I really appreciate your efforts. We really took care of a lot of little details and showcased Wendell. I was very proud of it. I want to tell you real quickly, and everybody, we've had kind of a long meeting, kind of, where I was, why I couldn't go to Campo, and I will get the minutes from that and read them. It was expected, and kind of last minute, I was invited, by the White House Office of Governmental Affairs to attend the Women Mayors of America White House Conference in Washington, D.C. I was really thrilled to be asked. I don't know what kind of criteria was involved. They called me a couple of times, asked me a lot of questions about myself and Wendell, and so I was very thrilled and honored to be asked. It was the end of September. Started at 9:30 in the morning with a White House tour. That was a lot of fun, followed by briefings from various departments throughout the day and then the rest of the afternoon. All the information that we received was geared to be the kind of thing that assists municipalities in doing their things that they do daily, and deal with the issues and challenges that we all have in municipalities. Just real briefly, we heard from Betsy DeVos, who's the Secretary of the United States Department of Education. She discussed the Every Student Succeeds Act and the unique needs that different students have and how that's going to be implemented. She mainly discussed what interested me was the efforts by the government to support technical education and apprenticeships and higher education opportunities for non-traditional students in an attempt to increase workforces in towns. And I think that is absolutely a great fit for Wendell. So I was excited to hear that. She said that they were making efforts to recognize multiple pathways to successful careers, that everybody doesn't necessarily go to college, and that a lot of people might be at a point in their lives where they would like to transition into another career, and their opportunities are being developed for those kinds of students. That definitely fits into Wendell. She told us that this summer Congress passed legislation to reauthorize the Perkins Career and Technical Education Act, and that's making investments in career and technical education again for training and supporting workforces. And that if any of you have ever had to fill out the FAFSA, I have several times with my sons. Everybody that goes to college has to fill it out, and it's just a bear. And they are reorganizing that to make it more efficient, and they were promised that you could even do it on a mobile device, and she said by October 1st, so I don't know if that worked out or not, but you know, that would be really great. They're also expanding flexibilities around Pell Grants and expanding 529 accounts to include K through 12 possibly. So those are all good things to hear about. The next person that we heard from was the Vice President, Mike Pence, and he thanked us all for being there and serving our towns and communities, and said that they are very anxious to hear from this group and partner and craft solutions for communities very much the size of Wendell. He passed out contact information and encouraged everyone to use it to, here it is, it's telephone numbers of all kinds of folks, to be able to create jobs and opportunities in our communities, and that's the purpose of this whole group in the meeting. So I was excited to hear about that. He then introduced his wife, Karen Pence, and she was there to discuss career opportunities for military spouses in towns and how they're making efforts to connect the dots. You know, military spouses move around a lot, and how you can hopefully keep your job if you have to move to another part of the country. She discussed a United States Chamber of Commerce campaign to support career development and employment opportunities for military spouses, and that was very interesting too. It probably doesn't pertain to Wendell quite as much as it would a town that has a military base close by. Then we heard from Linda McMahon. She's the administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, and she was there. It was very timely. This was the week after Florence, and actually the rivers around us had not even finished cresting yet. So she was talking about the direct low-interest loans to businesses and nonprofits, things to repair, replace real estate, personal property, machinery, equipment, and what have you, in the event of a natural disaster. So that was very interesting. And then she also discussed economic recovery of communities after that, should there be a natural disaster, because, you know, there's a lot of communities in North Carolina now that are really struggling. And also the economic recovery of communities even during good times. So that was very interesting to me as well. After that, There were some breakout sessions, and we heard from 3 in each one. I won't go into details about all of them, but mainly we discussed opportunity zones, the fact that they may redo that again, how Wendell could submit an application that would be more likely to be chosen. There's another chance for that, but it isn't certain yet. And essentially, that's a tax reform that creates tax incentives for businesses if they do things in a town that's been chosen for that. We also discussed how HUD is proceeding in affordable housing and making connections between people and skills, people with skills and companies who are hiring. We also heard from a shared priorities panel. This was particularly interesting to me because it was mostly discussing the opioid crisis, and the main lady in that was Kellyanne Conway, and she was discussing a new cabinet that they have formed to deal with the opioid crisis in the country, and how that they're using a 3-pronged approach: prevention, education, treatment, and recovery, and how once someone is in recovery, they can maybe get jobs. You know, once you've had a drug problem and it's documented, it's very difficult to get a job. So how they're working with that, and then of course law enforcement interdiction and the fentanyl and the involvement in that, and the toughening the penalties for that. It is an instant killer. And apparently the Senate has just passed a large piece of legislation that's going to support that. It's $930 million to the states. I received an email from the National League of Cities, because I was there, telling me how the process is going to happen, how that money is going to filter down to the different communities. So hopefully there may be something that we would be interested in keeping up with. If you have any more questions, if you'd like to hear more about it, took about 1 million pictures, and I'd love to tell you all about it. That's where I was, and that's why I wasn't at Campo. So, but it was nice to know Wendell was on the radar of something bigger than all the rest of us. All right, now we have a motion. We need a motion to go into a closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-3-18.11A.
3.
3. Thank you.
To consult with town attorney.
Yes.
All right, so I have a motion to go into closed session to consult with town attorney. All in favor?
All right.
All right.